I landed the job of my dreams, and then God told me to leave it and become a full-time homemaker. When we were living in Japan, I had 3 kids under the age of 5, and I started to become really discontent with being a homemaker. I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. Felt like there was more out there. I was comparing my life to other women who I knew, having all these other big achievements in life. I knew that I was needed at home, but I felt like I was meant for more. There was an opportunity to apply for dental assistant school, really competitive, but the program came with schooling, internship, and the opportunity to be hired at a dental clinic. I applied. I was selected, and then once school was done and I graduated, I was hired. I loved the work that I was doing. My patients were active duty Marines or sailors. I really felt accomplished every day when I went to work. Felt like I was putting my skills to use. I found out that I was pregnant with our 4th baby, and I got tired. Not only was I tired, but me working meant that we had to put our kids in childcare. One of our kids was in school. Other ones weren't school age yet, so that meant that they were in daycare all day long. I worked for 8 hours, and then when I got home, I was exhausted. My husband still wasn't home from work, so I had cooking to do. I had cleaning to do. I was done with chores and dinner. I would hit the bed. I was spending time with my family. Things took a bit of a turn. One day I got a call from childcare that my then 1-year-old had been given a food that he was allergic to at daycare. Swole up, he had hives. There were bumps and stuff all over his body. They had given him allergy meds, which was in our plan if he was ever exposed to something that caused a reaction. I left my job and I said I'd be there in 20 minutes. I was 5 minutes away from the daycare when I got a second phone call saying that they were concerned and they were going to give him his EpiPen. We had never given him the EpiPen before because he had never had an anaphylactic reaction. My husband and I arrived at the same time. We walked into the daycare just in time to see one of the care providers injecting my son with his EpiPen, and he was 1 year old, but I heard him screaming. He screamed the word no. My heart dropped. After administering the EpiPen, he had to ride in the ambulance to be taken to the hospital. Long story short, he ended up being okay. Needless to say, I was not happy about sending my child back to daycare. I still wanted to keep my job. Within 1 month of that, I was at work and I got a text from my husband saying, "I just fainted. They're sending me to the hospital." And I was like, "What?" I called him, he didn't answer. Then I got a call back from his coworker letting me know that he had fainted, that they were taking him to nearest hospital. Obviously, I was freaked out. I was panicked. I was very pregnant. And I asked my boss, like, "Hey, this just happened. Can I go?" And her response was, "Do you have any leave time accrued so that you can leave?" I didn't have enough leave time added up because I constantly used it so that I could go to events at my kid's school. And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Okay, well, you're just gonna have to wait." So here I am, pregnant, freaking out, wondering why my husband fainted, why I can't even go be at his bedside. Later that evening, I was able to go visit my husband. He had been transferred to the ICU for septic pneumonia, which was terrifying. Long story short, he ended up being okay. This was just another one of those times where I was thinking, wow, if I wasn't at work, I could have been there. In that moment, I didn't want to be a dental assistant. I didn't want to do anything except be by his side. There was another incident in that same month that involved me getting poked with a sharp. I was cleaning up from a dental surgery and was accidentally punctured with a needle that was used to give anesthetic to a patient, which is a whole thing because you don't know what's in a patient's medical history. I mean, you know what they tell you, but that was a whole thing because not only may I have been exposed to whatever was in his system, but I was a pregnant woman at that time. So not only was it a risk for me, but it was also a risk for my baby. That was a whole ordeal. We ended up needing to meet at the hospital. I was tested for things. He was tested for things. Thankfully, there was no risk. He didn't have any sort of disease that put me at risk or the baby at risk. And finally, there was an incident with my daughter at the time, who was my middle child. She was 3 years old, and I got a phone call from her teacher that she was kind of withdrawn. She wasn't participating. She started having behavior issues that she had never had in the past, and the teacher called me in for a conference. Not only did the conference involve talking about her behavior, but then she kind of ambushed me with a counselor and a therapist to talk about changes that had happened in the family. Of course, I was like, well, I'm pregnant. I don't think like that would change her behavior. And they were like, is there anything else that's changed? And then it occurred to me like, well, yeah, I started working. I used to be her everything. You know, she would go to the park with me. We would color. We would do lunch together. If mommy went to the grocery store, she came. So her whole life used to be mommy, and now suddenly all day she was with strangers. That's a huge change, probably difficult for her to process. So they were concerned not only about her behavior, but about her emotions and her confidence. And that completely broke me down because I couldn't believe I was the cause of these issues. And because I wanted work, I wanted more. I took leave right around Christmas time. The baby was born in January and I never went back. So when I say I believe God called me to be home, it was just way too many incidents and signs of him letting me know like how valuable and how irreplaceable a woman can be in her home. And as hard as that lesson was for me to learn, I am so grateful that one, nothing bad or dangerous came of any of those. Like my husband was sick, but he recovered fully. My son was exposed to an allergen, but he didn't need to be hospitalized. I wasn't injected with some sort of disease on my job, and my daughter was fine once our routine went back to normal. So if you're wondering, why do I ride so hard for being homemakers, for being stay-at-home mom? Because I've seen, at least in my life, what can happen when there's no obedience in that. When you do the other thing, even if that's not what God called you to be. I'm not saying God calls all women to be homemakers. I don't know, maybe he does. Maybe he called you to do something else. But I fully believe he allowed me to be selected in that program, for me to go through that school, and for me to have that work experience solely to show me what I would be missing out on and giving up if that was the life I chose. I never would have known that had I not gone through that. So I'm really grateful for the lesson learned. I will always encourage women to be homemakers, as well as seeking out ways to find personal fulfillment in those roles.